Today we look at the 10 operators that require the most skill. So what I mean by this is operators that have a really high skill cap. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that these are the top 10 best operators in the game. It just means that these operators have a really high skill ceiling, and these are the 10 operators who I believe have the highest skill ceiling. So coming in at the number 10th spot, we have Montaigne. Now Montaigne is like a walking drone, like he's a walking wall who can be used as a bulletproof drone if he communicates well with his team. Now he requires really good movement and communication, and a solo queue Montaigne is no good. However, if you get really good at Montaigne, he can win you the round. If he's able to push in and maneuver really well and scare off the enemies and have the enemies rotate back to sight due to a really good Montaigne, and then that could win you the round. However, a really bad Montaigne will just walk in, won't communicate whatsoever, and will just get your entire team killed. Now what makes Montaigne really hard to play, but once you master him, he's really good, is the fact it's the movement really. You have to have really good movement and knowing where to look at, like where to aim your shield whilst moving and where to move within that room to kind of cut off the enemies. So it takes a really smart player to know how to play Montaigne, knowing how to maneuver within that room and also. Now coming in at the number 9th spot is the new operator Kali. Now it might be a bit too early to say, but I think Kali does have a really high skill ceiling. Now the reason I think this is because the thing with Kali, she has a bolt action sniper, which I kind of look at as more of her main gadget than her actual like breaching stuff. But the reason I believe Kali has such a high skill ceiling is the fact that it's a one shot down and you're gonna have to have really good aim. You're also gonna have to utilize like really good spots to benefit from her sniper, and the fact that you only have a CZ up close for when you do need to push sight eventually, like I think really good players would be able to pull off some crazy stuff. Now if you can master that CZ and become a god at up close range gunfights, and then Kali is a really good operator. Now for the average player, Kali might not seem the best, but I believe if you can become a god with her, and then she is really good. Like I said, she is gonna need a like really good aim and just mastering that pistol really. Coming in at the number 8th spot, we have Pulse. Now Pulse comes in at the number 8th spot because Pulse requires insane map knowledge, being able to know the distance from you and the heartbeat, and then being able to work out where that play is based on the distance from you and the heartbeat is really hard. So the fact that some people know this, which a lot of high players or high ranked players do, like myself, no flex, but yeah, Pulse has a really high skill ceiling, being able to know where that heartbeat is exactly and being able to call out to your team, oh there's someone in kitchen, based on the heartbeat location is really good once mastered. Being able to utilize that C4 throw to deny the plant is really good as well. And what a lot of players do when they play Pulse, which they don't realize, is when attackers know that there's a Pulse, they're gonna target you. And I see a lot of Pulse players just sit under the site and not really bother what's going on around them. You need to realize that people are gonna target you and try to kill you first before they try to plant. So when playing Pulse next, make sure that you don't get snuck on by an Ash. Coming in the number 7th spot is Maestro. Now the thing with Maestro that makes him have such a high skill ceiling is utilizing his evil eyes, most importantly, and pretty much just knowing when to be on and off your cameras in specific situations. You're gonna want to put some good evil eyes down. You can use it to deny thermite. Now this is up to you. You can use it to deny thermite charges, or you can just use it to be annoying and waste time and just beam them all in a room. You can use it mainly just for intel and the fact that it's bulletproof, they can't do anything about it, and you can just use it for intel alone. And like I said, knowing when to be on and off your camera is really important, and a lot of high skilled players can do this really well. Also, the LMG having a high magazine size, it's really important on knowing when to reload, when is the best time to reload, when is the best time to be on your cameras, and all that sort. Coming in the number 6 spot, we have Knock. Now Knock isn't necessarily a really good operator, but she does have a really high skill ceiling. Like, knowing where to push and when to push is really hard to learn and important to learn, but once mastered, Knock can be insane and can change the round. Now obviously with Knock you're also going to need great gun skill due to her weapon being really bad performing weapon, so you're going to need that gun skill as well as knowing where to push and when to push. Now the reason Knock has a high skill ceiling, which you do see her a lot in Pro League actually, in Bank when they're below lockers, you might see a Knock sometimes push Garage. Now that is because usually in high ranked games on defense you will have a Maestro covering Garage, and the fact that Knock can be invisible to the cameras is really important. So knowing how to utilize Knock, knowing where to push, how to maneuver yourself within the room, and knowing when it's safe to push is really hard to learn, but once it's learned, and then she is really good. She might not be the best performing attacker, but once she is mastered, she can change the round. Now Knock being really sneaky leads us to the number 5 spot, which is Kuvira. Now Kuvira is the other spooky girl. Now the same with Kuvira really, knowing where to push and when to push is really hard to learn. Now Knock, you can argue that Kuvira and Knock are just the same but on attack and defense. Kuvira is able to interrogate, so knowing when it's suitable to interrogate is also really important, and really just having awareness as Kuvira is really hard to learn but really good once mastered. Now some might say that Kuvira is easy to play. Now this is kind of weird because when you're in copper, bronze, silver, I guess she could be easy to play because the other players are just like really bad and don't really notice. But once you're in gold, and then Kuvira can be seen as a bad op, but in high ranked, in plat and diamond, if you have a really good Kuvira on your team, that can change the round. Knowing how to waste time, knowing when to utilize her gadget, and just how to really move around the map as a really good Kuvira can waste a lot of time, because you're going to be on attack, you're scared to enter the building because of this Kuvira, and being able to just move around and waste a lot of time as Kuvira is really good. Coming in the number 4 spot, we have Buck. Now kind of like Pulse, Buck just requires a lot of insane map knowledge, knowing kind of, oh, if I shoot through the floor here and then it's gonna get someone who's behind here. So for example, think of a coastline, yeah? You got aquarium, and you usually have a Jaeger sitting behind the aquarium. Now a really good Buck player will go underneath an office and then buck up, and then it forces that Jaeger to move out of position, which then leads whoever is at the main double door of Aqua can just get an easy kill, which I guess could lead to really good communication as well. Now a really good Buck won't just buck straight away. They will communicate with their team, tell their team, when are you ready to get this freebie, this free kill. You both coordinate, and then okay, you shoot through the floor, and then it causes the other person to get a freebie. And really just overall Buck requires a lot of skill, mainly map knowledge. Coming in the number 3 spot, we have Smoke. Now Smoke is, I think, one of the hardest operators to play, but a really good smoke player can change around. Now you're going to want to utilize all 3 of those smoke canisters, knowing when and where is the best time to do it, but when is the best time to do it really, and kind of just mastering that shotgun SMG 11 loadout. A really bad smoke player would just waste all 3 canisters just for no specific reason. I think really good smoke players have learned that it doesn't really matter when in a round you use the canisters. Preferably you want to do it at the end of the round or close to the end of the round, or you try to at the end of the round, but you want to kind of use your smoke grenades to most importantly counter the plant, and second of all to counter their gadgets, I guess. So if they have like a lion going off or Dokkaebi going off, and then it would be good to just cut off a rotation with smoke just so they can't push it. Also, the thing with smoke as well, you need to set up really good, knowing where to use those rotations, knowing where to position yourself really. You want to make really good holes, know which wall to reinforce, how to make the most of your deployable shield, and mastering that SMG recoil. Now smoke overall is just a really hard operator, but once mastered he can be really good. Coming in the number 2 spot we have Echo. Now despite him being the most banned operator in the game, he is really hard to play, which you could argue he's really hard to play. Now the fact is just like being able to stay alive whilst maintaining plant denial and intel is really hard to do. Like I said with Maestro, knowing when to be on and off your cams in specific situations is hard to do, but once mastered he can be really good. Knowing when to go on your cameras and stop that plant, knowing when to come off your cameras and like just be aware of your surroundings, knowing when to have your gun up to kill enemies, knowing when to be on your drones to stun enemies is really hard. Now you need to keep juggling between the 2 drones, keep repositioning them throughout the round while also being aware of your surroundings and having your gun up is really hard. But nonetheless, if you are a good Echo player, and then that could just be devastating for the attackers, and that is Echo for you. Similar to Maestro, but a lot harder, hence why he's in number 2. Coming in the number 1 spot is Capital. Now I found it hard to pick between Echo or Capital, but I think Capital is probably the hardest operator to play, or in other words has the highest skill ceiling. Now Capital requires a lot of work and communication. It takes a lot of intel to know where and when to use the fire bolts and smoke bolts. Like the smoke bolts are going to be needed when planting or forcing enemies to push through the smoke, which also takes a lot of communication to know like where they are and all that, which in other words it just takes a lot of communication, and just which is why you see Capital a lot in Pro League and not so much in just solo queue ranked. Now a really good coordinated team can make the most out of Capital, and when you do make the most out of Capital he can be deadly. Just being able to utilize that smoke really well to help the planter, being able to utilize that fire bolts to cut off enemies and force them to come out of positions to get you that free kill. Now it's not so much his loadout that makes him really hard to play, it's just the crossbow and knowing when to use it and how to utilize it. You're going to need to intel from your other teams, because the thing is when you drone yourself, you could drone and then they could be like half wall. I'm thinking of Boulder armory lockers, they could be the half wall in the corner. You could drone it yourself, oh there's half wall, you peek it and then you go to firebolt it and you haven't got a kill and you're wondering. But the thing is there's a lot of time between you on your drone coming off, peeking the door. Like that could be like 4 seconds, but think in 4 seconds you could run from that corner all the way to like the other door within 4 seconds. So you need your other team to communicate with you, know when to shoot that firebolt, and then that will get you a free kill. And I just think overall Capital does have the highest skill ceiling. So just to recap, we have Montaigne, Carly, Pulse, Maestro, Knock, Kuvira, Buck, Smoke, Echo and Capital. Now this is just my personal opinion list. Let me know, who do you think deserves to be on this list? Who do you think has a really high skill ceiling in terms of operators? And that is pretty much it. Let me know what you thought of today's video. It's a bit different from my other videos, but I hope you do all have a wonderful day and goodbye.